Hi, I'm John. This is my show, An American Scheme, where I am proving that Diana Ross is Michael Jackson's actual mother. One little note I want to point out is that when Smokey Robinson was asked by The Guardian if he had heard the rumor that him and Diana Ross were Michael Jackson's real parents, now I believe that was on April 27th, because I believe it was the day before his album is being released, which was on April 28th. Okay, so his album is being released on April 28th, and he was asked the question on the 27th. And his initial response was, oh my God, right? And so with Smokey Robinson, when you get more into his understanding and stuff, and God's a big thing to him and stuff, but Smokey Robinson calls the day that he met Berry Gordy a God day. It's exactly the way he describes it. And and what he means about that is because the meeting of him and Berry Gordy spawned all kinds of things. There was all kinds of events, and that affected these people's lives directly. This one meeting directly affected their lives and a number of other people's lives in a way in which Smokey Robinson describes that as a God day. Okay, so when he was asked if he had heard the rumor about him and Diana being Michael Jackson's real parents, his initial response was, oh my God. Okay, because this is what I'm trying to explain to you, that this is in the context of that God day, that Smokey meeting Berry, because Michael Jackson is conceived just a few months after that. And then Michael Jackson is abandoned because of the relationship that has now developed between Smokey and Berry, right? So Michael gets abandoned because of that. Then Michael goes to the Jacksons and does the Jackson 5 stuff because Diana abandons her child at the request of Smokey and Berry. Then that's what enables Diana to strong-arm her way into Motown and become the lead singer of the Supremes, and she forces her ways into getting the good songs, because there's so much more involved into it. It's not just that Diana gets to Motown. It's not just that she becomes this lead singer of the Supremes, but she also is able to coerce the good songs away from like Holland, Dozier Holland, which I know she was in a relationship with one of them. One of those guys was totally in love with Diana Ross, so it's a thing to her that she's like, so I'm assuming she was sleeping with one of those guys too. There's like all kinds of stuff going on, but there's all this weird stuff that's going on, right? But it's because that she gave her child away that allowed her to do that, and that's that drive that's in her. Once she gave her kid away, she wasn't taking no for an answer. There was no failing in Diana. She had a vision. She was determined, and she went for it. And she knew she had the power and the leverage to get what she wanted because she had abandoned her child, and she had this leverage over Berry and Smokey. Because of what she had done, enabled them to start flourishing as Motown and stuff, right? So all of that stuff is taking place in the beginning days of Motown, and like I said, it flourishes up to the Jacksons, all that stuff. And where Smokey refers to that as a God day, that meeting between him and Berry, a God day, because it spawned all of these crazy events happen. That's why when Smokey was asked if he had heard the rumor about him and Diana being Michael Jackson's real parents, his initial response as, oh my God, okay? Not only is he aware that the significance of Michael and everything, but what it is that because he understands that was a God day, that initial thing. And then what's happening is Smokey was about to release his new album, okay? So he's asked about the Michael thing on the 27th. His album is going to be released on the 28th, and on the 28th, Smokey's playing at that Hard Rock Casino right above Gary, Indiana. I don't know if it's East Chicago, Illinois, or no, East Chicago, Indiana. And it's in that little city right above Gary, though. It's like right above Gary, right before you get to Illinois. I think there's that little town there. That's where that Hard Rock Cafe, I think that's where the casino's at, and you go in there and it's all, they got the whole Jackson, the whole wall is every single Jackson has a big mural with all these like artifacts and stuff, and it's like all the Jackson. I just pulled up a thing on Smokey when he was playing there, and they were showing the inside, and there was even a LaToya. Even LaToya had a big panel, and Janet had her own panel. It was all the Jackson 5, and they got all this Jackson's memorabilia in there, like all kinds of stuff. Like it's a big deal with that casino revolving around the Jacksons, right? So the day after Smokey's asked the question, he's going to be playing in the casino right there where the Jacksons are all immortalized and stuff, right? I wish I would... see, when I'm making a video like this, I'm not always sure what the conversation is going to be because I'm so pressed for time, right? So I just kind of put a little thing together and come on here. But like right there, it's like, I wish I would have... If I would have known that, I would have shown you the picture of the casino because Smokey played there, and I was showing you the date that he played there on the 28th. That was the day... So on the day that his album is going to be released, his new album... On the day that his album is going to be released on April 28th, he's also playing in that casino right above Gary, Indiana that's totally dedicated. There's a big dedication to the Jackson 5 in that casino. It's right there above Gary. He's playing in that Hard Rock casino. So that's what I'm saying. His response to, oh my God, right? When he was asked the question about him being, the rumor about him and Diana being the parents of Michael Jackson, his response of, oh my God, it's one of those things that I clearly heard exactly what had happened. He understands about that God Day thing, and he understands about right on the release of his new album, right when he's going back to, I'll just say Gary, Indiana, because it's right there. Right when he's going back to that area, to Gary, to play a show in the Hard Rock with all the Jackson stuff, and he's asked the story. He's asked the question, are you and Diana Michael Jackson's real parents? He's asked the question, right? But it was the first time anybody had ever asked him that, right? And he says, oh my God. He says, oh my God, because he knew exactly what had happened. That was a God day. This was another one of those God's moments intervening into his life, and he knew exactly when it happened. He knew exactly who was responsible for that. God was responsible for that. God did that, you know, and people are trying to stop me and all this stuff, and you people don't understand the powers at play here. God did that. God made that happen, you know, and I don't know what I'm this vessel to like bring to, God's using me as a vessel to relate this story. I don't know. That's one of those things when you're a person like me and I'm the actual one doing this and having to experience this stuff and go through it. It's like, I don't know exactly what the fuck is happening, but I can tell you this is what's fucking happening. I know this is what's happening. There's no doubt about it. Right, so then a week after that, on May 5th, it might have been the 4th. It was either the 4th or the 5th. On the May 4th or the May 5th, Diana's playing in that casino. Diana goes, so within a week of being asked, like this is one of those like, wow, holy shit, are you serious? That fucking happened? Within a week of being asked, when Smokey was asked if him and Diana Ross were Michael Jackson's real parents, he was asked if he had heard the rumor about that. Within a week of being asked that, Smokey and Diana are playing in the casino right above Gary, Indiana, that has all the more dedications and memorials to the Jacksons and stuff. Like, whoa, what kind of weird shit is that? How the fuck did that happen? Like, come on, people. Like, I'm saying, this is a God thing. What kind of chances was that? That the next day, Smokey's playing in that casino after he's asked that question. Smokey's playing there the next day, and then a week later, Diana's playing there, and she sings. In her concert, she's singing the song "Love Child," and when she's singing "Love Child," she rubs her belly because Michael was her love child. She is the mother of a love child, and that's when she sings that song "Love Child." There's a bigger meaning to that. And like when you look at the date of the Love Child, when it came out right when the Jacksons first came to Motown and did their audition. Right after that, boom, Diana releases a song called Love Child. And she's dressed in this weird clothes. Look at the album cover and look at her performance. I think it's on the Ed Sullivan Show when she's doing Love Child. She's got the bright yellow sweatshirt on with these cut off shorts, these jeans that are cut off. She looks like a little homeless kid, right? And Diana is like all glamour. But for some reason, for that song, she got into this love child character thing. She wanted to focus the attention. So So then the other thing that's happening is because Smokey has released his album, he's doing all these interviews, right? And because Smokey has such a connection to Michael Jackson, it's one of the things that brings a lot of attention to Smokey, because when the reporters are talking to Smokey, they can report upon Michael Jackson, and then when they report upon Michael Jackson, it makes the news feed. Like I said, I was going down the Yahoo news feed, and then this picture came up. I'm like, oh, what's that? Smokey and Michael, what the hell is this, right? And so I guess this is a interview Smokey did with Sirius Radio, because he's doing all these interviews now because he's released a new record, right? So let me read you something here. Let me read you parts here of this, right? So it says, and so this is Smokey talking. This is the interview. He says, his life was paradoxical to me. When he was a little boy, he was a man. And when he was a man, he was a little boy, Robinson told Fox. Now, I've heard like other people state that exactly. Like I can say exactly like Tommy Chong. I've heard Tommy Chong say exactly the same words about Michael Jackson, right? But this is the kind of thing where Michael Jackson's image, and people make these statements, and it's like this blanket statement that just gets thrown onto Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson didn't have a childhood. What do you mean Michael Jackson didn't have a childhood? He had the best fucking childhood I've ever seen. He got to freaking perform with his brothers and learn how to be in a band and play instruments. By the time he's 10 years old, he's signed to Motown. Oh my God, that's the best childhood. What kind of, he's spending all his time with his family and working to achieve greatness. As by the time he's 10, he got to Motown. There's under no circumstances could you ever consider that to be a no childhood. But everybody just believes it. Oh, well, Michael said he didn't have a childhood. And then everybody says, oh, he didn't have a childhood. I feel so sorry for that kid who had to learn how to become a musician and become a great star. Oh, I feel so sorry for that kid. And I look at these people, and what it is that you people are such losers, and Michael Jackson is so great that you have to insult him and belittle his existence. You've got to say, oh, well, yeah, he was the king of pop and he could sing and dance, but he had a shitty childhood, and I'm a better person because I had such a normal, good childhood. Why would I ever trade my pathetic life and try and want to be a star like Michael Jackson? I mean, he didn't even have a childhood. This is what it's like all about. It's like you people want to make yourself feel superior to fucking like a great person like Michael Jackson. But when Michael Jackson, he wasn't lying to you. What he was telling you was, the childhood of which he should have had never fucking existed. The childhood of what he should have been with his parents, Diana Ross and Smokey Robinson. That's a childhood. But when he was abandoned and then Joe just used him as like the goose that's laying the golden eggs, it was a means to an end for Joe. Joe never even cared about him. So that's how Michael has no childhood, because he was being used by Joe. So that's why in the context, see, because if Michael would have become an adult, Michael would have looked back upon Joe and said, you know what? Joe had a lot to deal with. And you know what? He got us to where we needed to go. And he had to work us hard because we were stupid kids. And he was smart enough to know that if he didn't push us that hard, we would have failed. And Michael would have, now as being a success, Michael would have looked back upon that and said, Joe did that. Joe made us a success. And he never, ever would have badmouthed his family and trashed his childhood into saying he didn't have a childhood. That would have never have happened. Not in the real world, but how does it happen? Well, it's because Michael wasn't a Jackson. And then when he realized he wasn't a Jackson and what Joe had actually been doing to him and that he was not actually a part of that family, now we can understand the meaning of the words Michael had no childhood, right? But I'm saying these people put these blanket statements down and they think it actually describes who he is, and it's bullshit, right? And this is what they say, like, so Smokey's here saying about Michael. So he says, his life was paradoxical to me. When he was a little boy, he was a man. When he was a man, he was a little boy. And yeah, that actually, it's not paradoxical, it's a sad reality, is that when he was an abandoned child and he had nobody to actually protect him, we realized he had nobody to really protect him, so he had to be a man. He had to be a man when he was a child because he was having to defend himself. And then when he became an adult and he found out he had no family, he became a little boy, a lost little boy again. That's what actually happened. I'm saying their explanation is these little words that gives you this blanket explanation. Everybody says, oh yes, that's what it is. There's no in-depth understanding of the true nature of what those words actually mean. Right? So then it says, but the first time I saw Michael, he was 10. And, when I thought about that, the first thing I was thinking about him being born. It's like, well, you know what? But yeah, my story says that Diana went to Gary. So there's a chance that Smokey never saw Michael when he was born. Maybe Smokey wasn't even there. So when Michael was actually abandoned and given away, like when Diana gave birth to him and actually abandoned him and gave him to the Jacksons, there's a very fair chance that Smokey was not ever there. So Smokey wouldn't have actually have met Michael Jackson until later on. So there is a thing where he says, but here's the thing, right there when he says he was 10, right? So he says, but the first time I saw Michael, he was 10. Okay, now that's a lie. That's a lie. And let me show you. And they don't want this information being told because once you get into this information, there's a whole... I've done this stuff, and it's so big and massive, and it's one of the things I point out little things, but this information gets to be so big and overwhelming and takes me to connections that I've documented and left it behind, but it's really like advanced, like Michael Jackson, like fandom knowledge and stuff, and understanding the development of the Jackson 5. It's really advanced stuff, and most people don't really like listening to this, right? But so... when the Jacksons were young and touring before they come to Motown, they were doing shows like at the Apollo and stuff. They were doing stuff. And when they were at those places, they would be on the amateur night, but they would be on the billing with like major stars. They would be working there with major stars. So there's no way possible that if Michael Jackson is there all day doing shows like that, there's no way possible that he doesn't meet Smokey Robinson. And the Smokey Robinson doesn't meet him. Because I'm going to read to you other parts too later where Smokey says that. But let me play this little part to you where Michael is saying that he used to do the amateur nights and there'd be the big stars there and he says the miracles. Right? So he's telling you right there that at least one day that we know that he was on the same billing as the Miracles at one of these shows. He was working with them at the place. So there's no way that the first time that Smokey met Michael, the first time he saw him was when he was 10 at the Pool House audition, at the Berry Gordy thing, at the Motown audition. That's not the first time he met Michael. That's a lie. That is a lie, and it's provable.
And we would do like 6 shows a night with Jackie Wilson, James Brown, the Miracles, the OJs, guys like the Pips. See, we would come on amateur hour. See, these people were, they had like a local record going, so we would come on amateur hour. We would win the trophy every time.
That part. Okay, that's one of my other videos and stuff. That actual video there, this is the kind of thing, is the person that made that video, the recording, that was the only copy I've ever found of it. And I asked the person when I made this video, I said, hey, can I use that video to make a video? And the person told me no, right? And then I said, well, fuck them. I said, that's not their recording anyways. They don't own it. The only thing they own is the little photo clip montage that they put together, but that's not their actual video, right? So I freaking recorded it and shit, right? I just took it then. I asked them, they said no, and there's one of those, this is kind of the things where I stopped learning to try and be nice to these people on YouTube, and I just said, fuck them, because they're all frauds and shit, right? They're gonna withhold information from my investigation. What kind of bullshit is that, right? I'm doing the actual real Michael Jackson. They think they're Michael Jackson fans, but they're going to withhold information from my fucking investigation. So that's what had happened. I had made this video and I used the video. After I used it, the person pulled the video off of YouTube or put it on private, something, right? They pulled it, they removed it. But I had it recorded, so, I've got it and shit, right? But this is the kind of shit that I've got to deal with and stuff, right? And so, here. Okay, so now we're back on... Okay, yeah, here, we're back on. Let me read this some more to you here. So then he says, you know, but the first time I saw Michael, he was 10 years old. Like I said, that's a lie. Michael just told you that he would play at those shows, and one of the people, he was playing with all those people. Like one of the people I mentioned was Gladys Knight. And yeah, we know that he had worked with Gladys Knight in a similar situation because we know that Gladys Knight was telling the Motown about the Jackson 5 a couple years before they had got signed to there, you know. So that's a couple years of them in that scene. How many times did they run into the Miracles? We definitely know he ran into Gladys Knight, like he had just mentioned there. One of the people would be Gladys Knight. Yeah, and they knew Gladys Knight. They all met and stuff. Like there's this one thing where this one person was saying, Gladys Knight was talking, and she was talking about like when she met Michael, and somebody said, who are those? Gladys Knight was saying, who are those kids? And the lady said to her, oh, those are Joe's kids. And it's one of the things when she says it, it's like they know who Joe is. Joe's a known guy in that scene and shit, right? They know who Joe is. It wasn't like, oh, you know that there's that guy over there. That's Joe Jackson. That's his kids. It wasn't like that. She was saying that's Joe's kids because Joe's a known guy in that music scene and shit, right? Because that's what I'm saying. That's how Joe knows Berry Gordy. They're known. They know each other. They're in the same scene and shit, right? So when Smokey right there is saying the first time he saw Michael was when he was 10, that's a lie. He's lying. And this is the part is that when these people do these interviews, they don't have enough information to come back and ask Smokey. When he says, when Smokey says, the first time I saw Michael, he was 10, the interviewers don't have enough information to say, wait, Michael was playing in the Chitlin circuit, you know, like on that, and same thing that what you guys were playing back in those days. And he was playing on the amateur hours of those places where you guys would have been headlining. He's like, didn't you ever come across the Jacksons when you guys were doing that before they came to Motown? See, that's what the reporter needs to ask. And the reporter said, I've heard an interview of Michael saying that he had played on a location where you had been. You need to ask Smokey those questions. If these people don't have the knowledge and abilities to be able to ask hard-hitting questions, then we can't ever get the truth. Then we always get the same stupid shit. Michael had no childhood. The same stupid fucking stories, and they keep saying the same shit I've heard a million fucking times. Because nobody knows how to ask real fucking questions. And then they don't know how to do follow-ups. They don't have the knowledge and information to do follow-ups. So when Smokey lies to him, you got to come back at him with the evidence and a fact to get the fucking truth. But these people aren't qualified in shit, right? But they're the ones doing the interviews. And I'm the loser in my fucking house yelling into a fucking video camera. Right? It's fucking crazy. So he says, he said it was 10 years. So he says the Jackson 5 actually came to Barry's house to audition. I just called him. There was a little something right there. He said it. But he was there's also another thing is that when the Jacksons do their first audition at Motown, when you actually go and you watch, if you go and you watch first Jackson's audition at Motown, okay, that's the Motown audition. And like in the movie, it's like the way they do it is confusing and stuff. And the way he's saying at the pool house, what happens is there's an audition at Motown that is videotaped. That's the one that we got the record of. That's the one that's videotaped at Motown. But then after that, then there was this pool party at Berry Gordy's house. Okay, now at that one, I know for sure Smokey and Diana Ross are there. And I do believe it's that one that after the Jacksons perform, Diana comes up to Michael and she says, I'm going to take special personal interest in your career. Like there's things like that that's going on. She knew exactly. And it was like the story of the reality of this. But that's what you've got to hit them with these hard facts and the evidence, or else you can't get the true explanation and the real story from these people. You just let them slide over with this blanket story that they've told us a million times and shit, right? So, like I said, when he's saying the Barry's house, there is a difference there, but you've got to clarify this stuff. But nobody ever knows the truth and doesn't know how to ask real questions. These reporters, they're not advanced enough. They're just doing a basic reporting that Smokey and they just let him talk, and then they write it up, and then that's it. This is not real journalism. That's what I keep saying. They're not real reporters. This is not real journalism, and this is the way it's been all the way. That's what Trump was yelling, fake news. It's fake news. This is not the real shit. And everybody then want to yell at me because you want to say, oh, well, you're negative. And it's like, how the fuck is it negative to ask for the truth and have real information and facts? How is that negative? I think this is the negative bullshit because they spout the same shit over and over and over and over and nobody ever fucking asks them any real fucking questions. It's the same fucking shit all the time, every time. Same interview over and over and over. I've seen this fucking interview 1,000 fucking times. It's always the same fucking interview. I've seen him talk about Michael like this 1,000 fucking times. It's always exactly the same. And nobody ever gets any fucking new information out of him. They don't know how to ask real questions. So he says, he said to the audition, and I just called him my said. I don't know the wording of that, just sounds weird. He says, you are actually James Wilson. Because he was a cross between James Brown and Jackie Wilson. He's 10 years old. And like that's crazy to and see, he's saying Michael is James Brown and Jackie Wilson, not the Jacksons. And there's a big, and you gotta, Smokey Robinson's favorite artist was Jackie Wilson. Berry Gordy wrote all the songs for Jackie Wilson, all the hit songs. Berry Gordy was writing those songs, you know? So when Smokey's calling this kid Jackie Wilson and James Brown, when he's comparing him to those artists, that's a big fucking deal, right? And do you think that he's comparing any of the other brothers? You think that any of those other brothers could be compared to the level of James Brown and Jackie Wilson? It has nothing to do with any of the brothers, which Berry Gordy never would have signed a big family of all these brothers because he did not need them. The Jacksons did not play the music on the album. The house band, the real musicians, the Motown house band, the real musicians, I got the Funk Brothers, maybe, I think that might be their name. They played the music. They're the real musicians. The Jacksons did not play any of the music on the record. So he didn't need them. They're not recording artists. They're not musicians. So what did he need them for? He doesn't really need them. The only one he would have needed was Michael. And that would have been the deal. I'll sign Michael. I don't need them. Because he wouldn't have seen like I can build this family. He never would have thought that way. Berry Gordy would have been thinking like a businessman. I need the talent. I've got the music people to write the songs. I've got the people to play the music. I don't need the rest of that family. That's a bunch of trouble. It's a bunch of problems, bunch of headaches and hassles. He never would have fucking signed them. Only Michael would have had a shot to get a fucking deal. Only Michael. But the reason why it's the family, because Joe is strong-arming Berry Gordy, because Berry Gordy gave Michael to him. And Joe is strong-arming fucking Berry Gordy. And he's like, this is the kid. The kid is legitimate. And fucking Barry's like, the kid's legit. All right, we'll sign them because the kid is legit. And then Barry's like, okay, well, now I have to work with the other ones. Let me think about what I can do. And then he figured it out and made it work and shit. Made it a good act and shit, right? But he never would have seen that vision unless he was forced to see it. Okay, so he says, he was 10 years old. He was just a little bundle of talent, you know? Robinson also deemed the Thriller legend the best he's ever seen. An incredible act, right? Yeah, because that was his kid and him and Diana's kid, you know? Okay, he says, he could sing and dance. And when you see him doing those dances and stuff, that you would think he's dancing with all those professional dancers, he noted of Jackson. Kids who had been dancing since they were 5 years old fit right on in. Made up some of those routines and stuff. That's who he was. Okay, let me scroll down. Okay, he says, Jackson would make the moonwalk his signature move and go on to do more iconic things in his careers, like the historic Thriller album accompanied with an unforgettable visual. The first movie video that he did, Thriller, he's out. He's dancing with all these professional dancers. He's dancing. He was just amazing. Well, Michael was a genius, man, the 83-year-old singer said. Michael was a little guy. When we were doing the shows and stuff like that, Michael would change his films. He would change. Okay, this is the thing. Right here. When we were doing the shows and stuff like that, Michael would change his films. He would watch everybody on the show. Everybody. Okay? This is what I'm saying. This goes back to the thing that I told you, that Michael Michael would watch all of those people. This is like when Michael was at like an Apollo and you had all these other acts playing, Michael would watch all of them. Michael would watch all those acts and he would learn and study constantly. That's what I'm saying. If Michael was at a location where Smokey Robinson was appearing too, there's no way that he didn't meet him. He had to have met him. But Smokey said the first time he had seen him was when he was 10. And it's like, no, but Michael had said that he had worked at a place where you were on the bill too. So, and right here, Smokey's telling you that when Michael was at a place like that, he would constantly watch everybody. He was always watching every act and stuff. He was studying everybody. And he damn sure would be studying. And Joe Jackson would be telling him, study Smokey. Follow Smokey. You got to watch Smokey. He's important because Smokey's with Motown and stuff, right? And Joe Jackson's all trying to get to Motown, and then Jackson's would be doing miracle songs and stuff. There's like all that stuff is going on and stuff, right? Like that's the kind of thing. If the Jacksons are doing an amateur hour, and what's to not say that they would have done a miracle song? And don't you think the Smokey Robinson would have wanted to go see that little kid performing one of his songs? Of course he would have. They had to have met. Before they came to Motown, they met. There's so much bullshit going on. Like I said, right there, he told you. Michael, he said he would watch everybody on the show. Everybody. That's what, and Smokey knows he would do that because Smokey was working with them, and he would be working with doing the Motown stuff. Like it's part of that stuff is too. But all those times before that, how did Michael learn how to watch everybody? Because that's what he was doing for all those years. Because when they're in those studios, it's not like Michael's a little kid. It's not like he's running around town partying with the girls in the bars when he was with the Jackson 5 before they came to Motown on those early days. When they're hanging out doing a gig at the Apollo, then they're in the Apollo. So what are these kids doing? Michael would be watching the other acts and learning and studying and getting better. And so Smokey would have been there. You know he met him. They met each other. There's so much more to this story than what anybody, because nobody knows how to ask the real questions. That's the crazy thing. And because of that, that's why Michael ended up dead before the story had come out. You know? And Michael, that's why he says this is it. And like I said, I think he committed suicide because that was it. Michael had thrown up his hands and said, I have done everything I can possibly do. How much more do I got to leave behind? And what more can I do before any of these fucking idiots out there are going to fucking actually understand my fucking songs? And care about me and start looking at my life and seeing what the fuck I left behind. And he's like, it never fucking happened all this fucking time. And he's like thinking it's gonna happen and it never fucking happened. So he fucking threw his hands up. This is it. I'm fucking out of here. And he kills himself because that's what opens up the door to being able to see his will and seeing Diana Ross is in his will. And that was the key element for me to making the discovery. Without him dying, without me getting that information, without me seeing that Diana Ross didn't show up to the memorial, I never would have had that spark and that thought that Diana could be his mother. But those things had to happen, which means Michael had to die in order for me to make the discovery. And it worked. Michael said, fuck it. I'm going to die. I'll make everybody look at my work and studying. And he's like, hopefully that's the only way. The only way I can get people to fucking see the truth is for me to die and have them go back and start nitpicking and investigating into my shit. And then he did that and it still didn't work. It happened to be this weird coincidence thing with me, how it kind of just rolled into it and it worked. But it did work, but it was a weird thing. It could have very well have not worked. Luckily, there was me. Luckily, I came into the picture and shit, right? So he says, he'd stand in the wing and just watch, you know? He'd shoot, you know? He'd watched all the dancers. He'd watched Fred Astaire, Jackie Wilson, James Brown, he added. When recalling the time Jackson Prince, okay, then that's another thing that really doesn't matter and stuff. So that's like some of the interview and stuff. Like I said, I'm always trying to see any more information I get, see if any of these people ask him any questions and stuff. So I'm still on this and stuff, and it still is, here we are. And you know, when I think about the legal obligations, you know, the legalities things is, we don't know, like, did Diana Ross ever sign a non-disclosure agreement? Does she have some contract with the Jacksons that she signed saying that she's not allowed to actually tell the truth, that she's not allowed to actually do it on her own. It has to be somebody else. You know, and with Smokey, and see, that's the thing with Smokey too. It's like, and with the Jacksons, you know, Smokey doesn't want to destroy the Jackson family, which that's exactly what this will do. When the truth comes out and Michael's not a Jackson, yeah, the Jackson family is going to be extremely damaged by this. And Smokey doesn't want to do that, so he's hesitant to tell the truth, right? This is the paradox of the reality of the world that they're actually dealing with, right? Why aren't they actually telling the truth? And that's what I keep saying, is that you've got to hit them with the real question, right? And so, and if I can't get any support from the Michael Jackson fans, I mean, how pathetic are they? What a bunch of disgusting, pathetic losers. No wonder he committed suicide when he realized what his fan base actually was. What a bunch of, like I say, the entire Moonwalker community is fake fans. They are horrible, horrible people because they're fighting against Michael Jackson. The whole Moonwalker community wants my page shut down, wants my story removed, which means they're fighting against Michael Jackson. That's why I say they're fake and they're evil. They're not Michael Jackson fans. There's no doubt about it. The same thing with the whole MJ Innocent movement. They're all fake, fraud, losers too. They are so fake and so fraud. If any of I would dare any of those motherfuckers to come and challenge my story, because I'll wipe the floor with them. This is not even close. I'm just going to annihilate those losers. And because my story's true. So what will they do? They all refuse to even mention my story. Nobody ever comes and challenges my story because it cannot be challenged, because it's true. And none of the Michael Jackson fans care about Michael Jackson. That's why my story is still just lingering, waiting and slowly moving forward. Instead of having people coming out here and actually just talk about it. I was like, why can't you look at a piece of evidence and say, well, what is this? What is this evidence? How come you can't look at one of my interpretations of Michael Jackson's songs and say, that's an interesting interpretation. And then when I show you, it repeats again on another song, and it repeats again on another song, and then it repeats again on another song and another song. It keeps doing it. It can't be coincidence, not patterns like that. That's what you got to be able to, you got to look for patterns. That's where the evidence is found. And what's a pattern through Michael Jackson's consistent relationship with Diana Ross? Diana Ross presents the Jackson 5. As soon as Michael Jackson goes to Motown, instantly Diana Ross has been connected to him. Instantly. There's a connection between Diana Ross and Michael Jackson on the first fucking record. Because they're going to have a relationship. They had to cover it up. Why is Diana going to have this relationship with Michael? Why is this existing? Oh, well, she discovered him. Yeah, she's their mentor. And that was all bullshit. That was a whole bullshit story. So what is the real story? She was his mother. She had abandoned him. And when he came back to her, she was like, God damn, I am not letting my son out of my fucking sight again. And she fucking was so happy, and she was joyous as could be. And she was going to have this relationship with her son, regardless of what the fucking Jacksons had to say. They had nothing to say about it. They had no power over that situation. And if they were going to fucking speak up, Diana could speak up and fuck the whole thing up and say, that's my fucking child. Who the fuck are you Jacksons? Get the fuck out of here. So they had to allow her to have that relationship. So what happens with the dynamic of Michael Jackson and Diana Ross's relationship? Diana Ross presents the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson's will. Diana Ross is placed as a guardian over Michael Jackson's children if Catherine can't fulfill the obligation. The whole gamut, from the very beginning to the very end. Who is it that's there? Diana Ross. It's constantly what's happening. Smokey was asked right to his face, have you heard about this rumor? And then he said, no, I didn't hear about it. Gave no answer. Just laughed. Because he was in shock. He was totally overwhelmed and shocked that somebody actually, and then that's the thing, when it's happening, he doesn't know, like, okay, wait, is this just some stupid rumor that somebody got lucky? Or is this actually something that somebody actually figured it out? He doesn't know because the reporter was not smart enough to hit him with any actual evidence. That didn't happen. So Smokey's still sitting out there wondering, I posted comments on his page. I've sent him fucking emails on his page. You go to his website. I've done that shit. Nobody's ever contacted me. So I gotta keep doing this shit the way I fucking do it. But like I said, it's God's hands at play, God's hands at work. There's no stopping this. This is inevitable. This is inevitable. There's no way that this will be stopped. No way. It will happen. But why are we going to wait? Why are we waiting and taking the risk of losing Smokey Robinson or Diana Ross? Why are we taking the risk of losing Michael Jackson's real parents and getting their true eyewitness testimonial to what actually happened? And their true eyewitness testimonial that completely validates Michael Jackson's life and removes all of the negative stereotypes with the pedophile bullshit. We get rid of all that shit and we take Michael and put him up on the pedestal where he fucking belongs as the king of pop, the greatest fucking performer that has fucking ever lived.